Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and there's a phenomenal book that Tim Ferriss put together called Tribe of Mentors. And I say he put it together because ultimately what it is, as the title implies, is world-class athletes, very successful people, entrepreneurs, and so forth, people top of their fields, answering a series of questions that Tim had put together. He put together 11 questions, and the people could answer any number of them. That's what was compiled and put into the book. And I thought it'd be fun to answer some of the questions myself. So I'm not doing all 11 questions, but I am doing a good chunk of the questions to help add my contribution. And one of the things, because the thing that makes the book wonderful is that, there's certain advice that might not apply to everyone, right? Let's say the first time, if you were to read The Tribe of Mentors, 20% of it would apply to your life, let's say, right? And that's wonderful. Now, it's there as a guide for later in life because, 5-10 years from the time of your initial read, you might go through it and find new stuff more applicable now, right? Because life changes for us and we get new perspectives and viewpoints into things, and things just apply differently and hit differently, right? That's why, like, when you revisit, let's say, one of your favorite movies, it evolves over time because you evolve over time, right? So that's the wonderful thing about it. And by me answering some of these questions, I hope it's helpful. I hope you find value in it. If nothing else, I hope it's fun for you, and maybe you too can do your own version of this. For the full 11 questions that Tim put out for people, if you just type in Tim Ferriss 11 questions for Tribe of Mentors, results will come up. I've also linked to it down in the description as well if you're curious. But here are my answers to some of them. What is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why? And what are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life? So here's a couple of the books that I've gifted to people a lot, and that is The Tao of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff, This is Water by David Foster Wallace, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and the two that have influenced me the most was Platform Revolution by Jeffrey Parker, Marshall Van Alston, and Sangeet Chaudhary, as well as The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. Okay, that was a laundry list of stuff, so let me kind of break this down. So let's start with the 3 that I've gifted the most. The Tao of Pooh. It's a philosophy book about Taoism, explained through the eyes of Winnie the Pooh. And it argues that Winnie the Pooh is one of the best Stoics out there. It's got pictures in it. It's very easy to read. Like, you can literally pick it up and probably read it within an hour. But that doesn't make it any less impactful. In fact, the whole point of Taoism is to simplify things in a way that one can actually understand them and apply them. And this is a book that I try to revisit at least once a year. And the people that I've gifted this to really find it impactful and meaningful. And, I discovered the book in college, and it just altered my life in such a fascinatingly unique way and powerful way. So I truly, truly love it for all those reasons. And, it teaches us to not overcomplicate life. Like, for example, one of the lessons people always say, the saying is fight fire with fire. And, in the book, it makes a very simple argument of, like, why would you fight fire with fire? Fight fire with water. And that's essentially Taoism in a nutshell. And I love how it illustrates those points through the eyes of Winnie the Pooh and the rest of the characters from 100 Acre Wood. Fantastic book. This is Water by David Foster Wallace. Technically, this was a 20-minute commencement speech that Foster Wallace gave in 2005. And it is regarded as one of the best commencement speeches of all time. And I encourage you to listen to it. You can get to it on YouTube. It's absolutely phenomenal. But what they did was then take that commencement speech and put it into a little book. And I love it. And one of the reasons I love it, right, I'm going to quote here, this isn't part of the quote, but it points to the fact that, quote, the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sense, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have life or death importance. End quote. And so it greatly differs from like what a stereotypical inspirational commencement speech might be. But it gets down to this truth because, when we grandize things in our life and just strive for the extraordinarily beautiful moments, we'll be bogged down because life sadly is filled with things like traffic, grocery shopping, laundry, cooking, cleaning, sleeping, and all that. That if you don't look at those as magical, mystical moments, which is a choice that David Foster Wallace argues for, that you have in your grasp, then you'll just see that those things as chore, quite literally in every sense of the word, and it'll be things that just get in the way of what you want to be doing, quote unquote, and you'll be pissed off and miserable for the rest of your life. And that's why he argues the life and death importance. So that's just the taste of kind of what the speech is about, but you have to like hear it, you have to read it. It's called This Is Water by David Foster Wallace. So check that out. The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, to me, is a must-have for any artist. In the book, Pressfield highlights the discipline that is needed to go from amateur to professional. And he doesn't define professional as someone who makes money at their craft necessarily. It's more about, day in and day out, are you putting in the effort that you need to, And what he argues is that that there's resistance with a capital R everywhere. Our chattering voice, all the things that life puts in front of us as obstacles and so forth, that we could very easily just be like, okay, well, whatever, I'll do it tomorrow or whatever else. But if in your heart of hearts you want to be an artist, whatever that may mean to you, a painter, a musician, a writer, a filmmaker, an actor, doesn't matter. If this is in your heart of hearts, the only way to achieve this is, by overcoming resistance. So a large part of the book is, ways to overcome that resistance. And then in many ways, it's also so inspirational. Like often the last paragraph of the book is one of his most quoted lines ever, and I won't say it here because I don't want to spoil it. I want to tell it to you, but I don't, at the same time, like if you read the book, it's a culmination of all that, and when you get to that sentence, you're just so freaking pumped that I don't want to take that away from you, right? Then the two books that have impacted me the most is one called Platform Revolution. And I'm just going to kind of read from my notes. Technology is a huge part of our world today. Successful tech companies are managing to disrupt their markets like no other time in history. How? They build on platforms, two-side markets that revolutionize the way we do business. And this book addresses how this came to be and how it affects our daily lives. And it showcases how you too can participate in this new paradigm. So, think of like something like Uber. They don't own any cars, and yet they're, a service that gets people to and from places, right? Airbnb owns no property, technically, right? And yet people use them all the time. So it's the idea of building this platform and allowing people, to basically be both, because let's say someone like with Airbnb, right? Someone can utilize the service of Airbnb as well as be someone that that puts their apartment, their house up on Airbnb. So they can both be a consumer as well as a seller, for lack of a better term, right? And that's an interesting notion, and it's really revolutionized the world. And it's both fascinating from just observing society, but also, if you're someone like me, like how do you participate in take advantage is the wrong word because it implies something nefarious, but the idea of how you can sort of tap into that and help elevate what you've got going on and also help people in the world, right? Then there's The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. Interestingly, I came across this book when I needed it most. I was in a rut and didn't know how to pull myself out of it. And then this book really opened up my mind because what it essentially told me was I was thinking in finite terms instead of infinite terms. And to read a little bit, as the book defines it, finite games have known players, fixed rules, and a clear endpoint. But that's not life. Sure, there are finite games within our life, but overall, our lives don't have a clear endpoint, nor known players and fixed rules. And when I understood this concept, I was able to stop fighting against reality. Like a career, in a sense, is infinite for the most part, right? Until I decide to retire, which then, as the book argues, I've taken myself out of the game. But I'm just kind of like a player within that anyway, because let's say my career, let's just define it as, let's say I'm a podcaster, right? When I retire, podcasting is not going away necessarily. And so, I'm just, you can look at us as a small cog in the wheel, but not really, because I advanced the podcast forward and I've done my bidding, if you will, and then I can leave that and allow other people to take over. Elections, for example, is finite, right? Because there are known players and rules and clear winners and losers, right? At the end of election. But the idea of governance, right, is not a finite thing because governance, continues on and on and on, right? So, and it's a very difficult thing at first to wrap your head around because, again, as the title implies, infinite. Infinite is just so overwhelming in a sense of a word. And that's what makes it scary. But once we kind of think in those terms, as I said, we don't fight against reality. And that was so beneficial to me. So the book does a far better job of explaining this than I am doing. But The Infinite Game altered my life tremendously for the better. All right, so that was the first question. That was a lot, but let's continue. Number 2. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months or in recent memories? And Tim also notes, my readers love specifics like brands and model, where you found it, etc. So for me, the best $100 or less purchase that has impacted me is the EMS muscle stimulator. So in college, when I played soccer, we had various equipment whenever someone was injured, and this was one of the things that helped me recover from injuries faster or sore muscles and so forth. And as I get older, even though I don't get injured, I feel muscle soreness and so forth a lot easier. And so I purchased this. I was like, you know what, this will be a worthwhile investment. It'll have astronomical cost return, meaning the cost is low, but the return is high for me. And so, after workouts and things like that, I'll put on the stimulator and just relax my muscles in that way and recover a lot faster than I normally would, right? So that has been a great purchase for me. And I don't think you need to be an athlete to utilize this. You can, just even working out and things like that, I think it's a worthwhile investment. So that was question number 2. Question number 3. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting a message out to millions or billions of people, what would it say and why? It could be a few words or a paragraph. Excuse me. So my message would be this: measure life by its width, not length. So whenever someone passes away, we often refer to this person lived 80 years, 90 years, whatever the case may be. That's the length. And, as eulogies happen, we kind of touch upon all the impact they had in their life, and that's width, right? So, and at funerals, this is when we kind of really consider a person's impact. But in the day-to-day structures of our lives, for the most part, we just have this goal of living long. We talk about it, I want to live to be 100 or whatever. And by default, we think living longer allows us to have more impact. And it certainly has the possibility of doing that for us. But it kind of negates, in some sense, the width in the moment. What impact, what influence do you have in this moment? Rather than just look at I want to live to be 100, redefine that and start thinking of the impact you want to have right here, right now, and however long you live, you live. I think that's a much better way to view one's life. So my message is measure life by its width, not length. Number 4, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? Could be an investment of money, time, energy. So for me, a few years ago, I decided to participate in the Financially Fit Foundation's workshop. I really wanted to learn more about finances and personal wealth and how to essentially manage my money. And the workshop didn't disappoint. It quite literally moved me to tears because it was just so shocking, all the things I didn't know that ironically were so simple, right? And I know I'm not the only one. We in society, we don't get taught about finances, the foundations of how to manage money, right? There's a ton of books on credit cards and making investments and so forth, but there's not really a foundation for all of that upon which we're starting off at. Starting with budgeting and how to actually save and spend in alignment with your values, not your ego. And these are all things that the foundation teaches and prepares you for. And, so you can metaphorically build an amazing house upon, right? You can't build a house on a crappy foundation. And so this allows you to do that. Plus, the reason why it's called the Financially Fit Foundation is because it looks like it looks at finances no different than working out, right? Let's say, right here today, you decide hey, I'm going to start working out and my goal is to lose, let's say 10 pounds. Well, you're not going to lose that overnight. You have to build towards that. You have to start, and it starts with discipline and exercise and keep it going on a daily basis. Well, that same mentality applies to our finances. And so, this foundation really changed my life. And full disclosure, I am now a board member on the foundation because of the impact it's had on my life. But the good news is it's a nonprofit organization. The workshops are free. There's free resources on financiallyfitfoundation.org. And we're posting on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, various tips to help you out with finances. And so I'm excited to be a part of it because of the impact it had on my life. It was such a worthwhile investment. Okay, moving on. Number 5. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing you love? And okay, so for me, as silly as this may be, whenever I go to a parking lot, I just park my car at the far end of the parking lot. And that's I don't want to waste my time by like finagling a spot that's close to whatever the location is. Because ultimately that's where most people are congregating, and so I'm just going to be stuck in a car looking for a spot, generally speaking. Whereas if I just, bolt towards like the end of the parking lot, boom, there's spots, I can park it, it's quick. And the added benefit is I don't mind the walk. In fact, I enjoy the walk. For me, I'm someone who loves incorporating physicality into my everyday rather than just looking at it separate of, like, let me go to the gym to work out. It's like, no, let me just, in order to lead a healthy lifestyle, let me just have a healthy lifestyle. And so by parking far away, I can I can walk, and, it's not necessarily like exercise, but it gets me a couple extra steps, and that's not a bad thing, right? No different than I always take the regular stairs, not the escalator, because it's like, might as well walk up the damn stairs, right? And tangential to this, I'm just going to give one thing as well. I always take a picture of where I park because I don't want to have to remember the parking spot. So if you ever go through my phone, most pictures will just be of parking spots. Anyway, so that's the absurd thing that I love to do. Next question. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life? And this, for me, has been going to therapy. I used to really believe that therapy was only for crazy people or people who didn't have their shit together. And this was perpetuated by, just media that I grew up on, like referring to a therapist as a shrink, or like, the idea like, oh, what are you, crazy? Blah, 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 right? This was in the TV shows and movies that I used to consume. And boy, was that a limiting belief, because when I started going to therapy, it unlocked me in ways I couldn't imagine. And the amount of bricks I'd been carrying for so many years were finally just offloaded. Not that like, it's not like I'm fully cured or healed. None of us, it's an ongoing process like anything else in life. But the weight that has been lifted off my shoulders by consistently going to therapy for the years that I've been going, people have noticed the difference. They say to me all the time, like, you just carry yourself differently, and the things that you're doing, like, are just so inspiring. I'm not saying that to, like, toot my own horn, but apparently, this is what people recognize me, and for me, I just feel good, and I'm excited by the things that I'm doing, and so I do them. And therapy has been the key to unlock that for me. All right, number 7. What are bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise? Well, for me, that you need lots of money and resources to create the things you want. Specifically for me, film. You don't. I find as human beings, we are so good at lamenting about the things we don't have, when instead that energy could be spent on using your creativity, right? If you're an artist, you would think that you're creative, right? That should be one of your traits. And so instead, instead of lamenting, put that energy of like, okay, well, I don't have X, Y, and Z, but what do I have at my disposal, and how can I utilize it best? Robert Rodriguez talks about that in The Rebel Without a Crew and his various 10-minute film school videos that you can find on YouTube. And the truth of the matter is, like, I've been listening to the Team Deakins podcast. It's a podcast hosted by cinematographer Roger Deakins and his partner, James Deakins. And they interview just phenomenal, world-class people in the film industry. And one thread that continues throughout, like, no matter how much money a production has, and, many of them have been, like, some of Disney movies, Marvel movies, whatever, there's always going to be limitations, right? Even on a movie like Inception that Christopher Nolan directed, like, there's mishaps and limitations, and you always feel the pressure and so forth. So that doesn't go away no matter how much money you have. So the key is to learn to work within whatever limitations you do have and get creative with it. If you literally have no money, well, do you have a cell phone? Because guess what? Like now, our cell phones are they capture such incredible video in high definition that in low lighting situations, like people have made professional movies on iPhones, and Samsungs to me are even better. Like it's just incredible. And you can get free editing software out there and free graphic software and so forth. Yes, there are better versions, if you will, for the stuff that you pay, but free options do exist. Caltex, you can do up to a tier, like up with limitations, you can do free screenwriting software. So there's things out there for you to be able to take advantage of that are free. You just have to be open to them and get creative rather than, as I said, fret over the stuff that is not at your disposal. So that's my best advice. In the past 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to? Distractions, invitations, etc. What new realizations and approaches have helped? Any other tips? Well, I'm going to read my notes. I've become better at saying no to things that others deem important but aren't really of interest to me. Part of how I got to this place was I defined what success looks like for me. For too long, I let society dictate what I should value as success. And there's overlap on some things for sure, but overall, I don't sweat the differences. For example, I'm much more content at having my free time, even if that means making less money and having less notoriety, than working 90 plus hours a week for someone for ultimately just a little bit of money in what possibly may be a toxic work environment. And all because on paper that's supposed to look good. No, I'm not interested in that, right? When you define what's important to you, it becomes easier to say no matter how people view your decision. And people are always going to have an opinion for the most part. And so, yeah, really live life on your own terms is essentially what I'm saying there. And when you do, it becomes easier to know what to say no to and not feel bad about it. All right, so this is the last question I answered, right? So this is question number 9 that I answered, but there's 2 more that I didn't. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or lost, you're focused temporarily, what do you do? If helpful, what questions do you ask yourself? Well, as I have written, whenever I feel overwhelmed or unfocused, there's 3 things I do depending on the severity/situation. If I don't have a lot of time, I take a nap. Might sound silly, but yes, I take a nap. Just a 20-minute one. And as I said, it takes up time, but it relaxes me and allows me to start fresh when I wake up, right? So all the worries and things like that I was thinking about before I took the nap, it just resets me. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I got this. Not a big deal. I can tackle the problems from a new perspective. The second option, if available to me, is I go on a long bike ride. I love biking because being outside and seeing neighborhoods while working my body physically releases the tension I feel. It takes me out of that situation and allows new ideas to flow in me. And lastly, if it's something really complex, then I book a therapy session right away, even if I had one not too long ago, because I need professional guidance and feedback to get me through something. So those are the 3 things that I employ depending on the situation in my life. So this has been my version of Tribe of Mentors. I wanted to add my thoughts to it. As I said, not every question may apply to you, be helpful to you, but hopefully at least 1 or 2 were, or at the very least they got you thinking about how you would answer these questions. Thank you for taking the time to join me. As always, if you have thoughts or questions of your own, please comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. It means a lot to me. If you would like to support me even further, then I have my fiction book out, Alon. I have my nonfiction book out, Master Mental Fortitude. I have my first feature film called Love Market. All three are available on Amazon. You can just literally search Phil Svitek and they'll pop up. They're also linked to in the description box. So that's one of the ways to support me. Or, if I can be of service to you, you can check out my website for coaching and consulting services. And also, in a more unofficial capacity, I can help you through my Patreon page. I've really, while I love doing episodes like this, it doesn't quite crack the direct interaction and impact that I feel and I love. So through my Patreon page, I've structured it in a way where it allows for more of that. So you can check that out, patreon.com/Phil Svitek. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and hear me out. I hope to see you next time.